The 227-day wait is over. Syracuse men's basketball returns today, and Hoops fans that are hungry, you're getting fed to the first exhibition of the season between Clarion and Syracuse. Glad to have you with us on the Cuse.com pregame show. Andrew Selover, Riley Underwood, and Riley's ready to eat hoops for breakfast, lunch, and dinner until March.
I sure am, and I'm sure all Syracuse fans are. Basketball is back. It's a big season in the 315.
Syracuse fans might be ready for basketball to be back after the football team lost at Pitt on Thursday. And let's get into this Syracuse team in 2024. But to understand what's going on this year, we have to flash back to the first season under Adrian Autry. And the Orange were really hot and cold throughout the year. That was shown in the first half versus second half performance against Colgate when the Orange came back from 24 down to win.
Yeah, that was the third game of the season that made people a little bit nervous.
Syracuse then would struggle on the road mightily in the ACC. The Orange gave up a century number at UNC. And the Orange were a completely different team at home versus away from home. They had a little bit of dome magic, as seen here by Quadir Copeland's buzzer beater to beat Miami.
Yeah, getting some momentum going at home in the Dome is huge for this Orange squad this year as well.
Not the last time that Syracuse would storm the court either. They had fans all over the place. You won't see Quadir Copeland in an Orange jersey this year. He transferred to McNeese State, but that Orange team back at it at home. And the same North Carolina team they lost to by almost 40, they beat the number 7 team in the nation and stormed the court again.
Yeah, they came in with a plan, a revenge game after the embarrassment earlier in the season.
Syracuse just couldn't take that A game on the road, though. First game of the ACC tournament, they lose to NC State, a team they had beaten twice in the regular season, and that launched the Wolfpack all the way to the Final Four. Improvement from the year before. Syracuse went from 17-15 to 20-12, and they were tough to beat at home, 14-2 at the Dome, but still not enough.
Not enough. You would have liked to see a couple of later in the season wins, that last Clemson game, a couple ACC tournament wins to string together maybe an NCAA tournament berth, but just couldn't get it done.
So that was the resume on year one for Adrian Autry at the helm of Syracuse men's basketball. 3 years without an NCAA tournament appearance, and Coach Autry is hungry to get the Orange back this year in year 2.
Yeah, he's a Syracuse guy, and he's really impressed in his first year at the helm. No NCAA tournament appearance, but that's tough for any first-year coach taking over a program. Now he has his guys that he brought in. This is his team.
Over a decade as an assistant here at Syracuse, had so many highs and lows. They dismissed Benny Williams from the team last year, and it feels like now he finally can say this is an Adrian Autry Syracuse team.
It is an Adrian Autry Syracuse team, and tonight's really going to be the first test to really see what this team looks like.
So let's break down what you will see from Syracuse men's basketball. So many new pieces to show to you headed into the new season and the first exhibition against Clarion. It starts on that coaching staff. Jerry McNamara, longtime assistant, last year's associate head coach, leaves to take his first head coaching job at Siena. And so in his place, Dan Engelstad.
Dan Engelstad is a great get for this Orange program. I mean, anytime you can get a guy that's coached at the Division I level for 6 seasons, you're smiling after he signs that contract.
So Engelstad comes in after 6 years at Mount St. Mary's. He took that team to one NCAA tournament in 2021, and he comes in for Jerry McNamara, who goes to take over a 4-28 Siena team. Siena will be better this year, I think.
With Peter Carey, too.
Exactly. So a couple of hints of orange with the Saints. But let's talk about the new players on the court for Syracuse. And first, they'll have 2 returners this year. That's key. Syracuse lost a number of players, but they get 2 starters back.
They sure do. J.J. Starling is going to be a huge returner for this team. He's a really talented player, and he's going to thrive playing a true 2-guard with Jaquan Carlos by his side in the backcourt. He improved all his shooting and scoring statistics from his freshman to sophomore year, of course, at Notre Dame to his sophomore season, and I think you can expect him with this larger role to take an even bigger leap this year.
He was the big transfer get last year for Adrian Autry. Hometown kid, came in from 1 year at Notre Dame. He led the team shooting the ball from the floor at 46%. But their best 3-point shooter, Chris Bell, he was one of the best in the country on good nights.
Yeah, and he's the best returning shooter in the ACC, no question about it. He shot 42% from deep last season. He also shot 84% from the free throw line. That's really impressive and needed when you want some extra points at the charity stripe.
I'm pretty sure that Chris Bell was 1 or 2 made threes away from having the best 3-point percentage in the ACC. These are two guys that can really put the ball in the bucket.
They can. They've proved it time and time again, and they're going to get another chance to mentor these young guys that are coming in and these new guys to the program as well.
There's only 2 returners from the starting lineup coming back. Those are the 2, Starling and Bell. And they'll have plenty of new guys to welcome into this orange culture because Syracuse and Adrian Autry, we mentioned Starling transferred in last year. Well, Coach Autry really attacked the transfer portal this year. He gets 4 new guys to come in from other programs.
Yeah, they're really going to make an instant impact. And that all starts with the big man, Eddie Lampkin Jr. He's been all around the NCAA, started at Texas Christian, then to Colorado, but he's a big body, 6'11", 265, and he might be weighing more than 265. He's a versatile big man. He can shoot it. He can score inside. He's a really menacing presence down low.
And he also brings NCAA tournament experience from the Buffaloes. Scored 21 points in a win over Florida in March Madness last year. Also, Jaquan Carlos expected to run the point for Syracuse. Much different style than Judah Mintz.
Yeah, he's an elite passer. He can score the ball at all 3 levels. He's under-recruited out of high school because of his size. But this is a guy that scored back-to-back 90-point games in high school in Brooklyn. He's a tough player, and he's really fun to watch.
So Jaquan Carlos expected to lead that point guard role. He was top 15 in the nation in assists last year. But there's 2 other transfers that we should highlight as well. Jair Davis comes in from Delaware, another true scorer.
He's a bruiser. He'll use the weight room against you, and he's a good mid-range shooter as well.
Lucas Taylor spent 2 years at Wake Forest, so he has ACC experience. Then he went to Georgia State and also put the ball in the basket.
Almost 15 points a game at Georgia State, and he has underrated hops too. He'll get up and dunk it on you. He attacks the rim, and he isn't afraid to pull up from NBA range either.
So it feels like this Syracuse team has a lot of threats to score the basketball this year, which is always good. But the biggest area of concern last year was rebounding. Syracuse really struggled down low, had to play Malik Brown at the 5 for large portions of the season. And so in this freshman recruiting class for Syracuse, size was a big key, and Donnie Freeman answers that question.
Donnie Freeman is the BMOC, the new big man on campus. He's Mr. Do-It-All, an offensive juggernaut, a consensus 5-star recruit.
Might have to have the battle for big man on campus between Donnie Freeman and Eddie Lampkin. You also get a true shooter in Elijah Moore.
Yeah, this shooting guard is a true shooting guard. He can pull up from anywhere beyond the arc, arguably the best shooter in this recruiting class.
And Donnie Freeman, the highest freshman recruit to step foot on campus since Carmelo Anthony. He's expected to play into the depth of this team. That was another question for Adrian Autry, and he explained ahead of this year how key the depth of this squad will be.
This year, we have, 11, 12 guys that, as of right now, are healthy. And, for us to be successful, we have to play more guys. This is a very balanced team, a very competitive team. I think that the strength of this team will be in how many guys we can play.
Need about a 60-inch television to lay out all the different pieces that could play a factor into this season for Syracuse. A couple more that we haven't talked about yet. A couple of returners, Kyle Cuff, Chance Westery. Westery should be healthy, not expected to play today, but he could play a key role. He
could. He's a big question mark for this team. A really high recruit out of high school, but he hasn't played basketball in nearly 2 years.
You also get Peter Majstorovic, a freshman. He was a late addition to the recruiting class.
He's an overseas guy, too. 6'8", from France, and I think he could play a really big role on this team. The coaches have raved about him, his outside scoring, his inside defending as well. They say he's a 6'8" guy that can play the 4 and the 5.
And you want to talk about size. How could we forget about the 7'4" Naheem McLeod? Foot surgery cut his season short last year, but he's a force down low to be reckoned with.
And people forget, all 14 games he played last year, he started it. And if you get a 7'4" guy that can play like a 7'4" guy, if those coaching staff can put him in the right position to actually play like a big man, he could be a real menace down low.
So I think we've touched them all, covered our bases, the double-digit list of players you could see today. A number of them in threads with Syracuse for the first time. We'll talk about Clarion, the opponent, next. The Golden Eagles of Clarion come soaring into one of the biggest venues in college basketball today. Exhibition action to start the Syracuse men's basketball season. Andrew Selover, Riley Underwood back with you on the Cuse.com pregame show. And let's talk about these Golden Eagles, Division II Clarion squad that comes in from Clarion, Pennsylvania. And this team comes in off a much better 2023 season than the year before.
And really, that's not saying much, Andrew. It's a team that hasn't had a winning season since 2012, hadn't had a 20-win season since 2000, so really a program that's trying to get back on track.
It is a Clarion team that went from 1 conference win playing in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference to 6 conference wins a season ago. So much improved in the conference, and they get a big test today in Syracuse. One of the big stars that we expect to shine today for Clarion is Cam Kearney.
Cam Kearney, they return their leading scorer, and all the pressure is going to be on him to carry this team to more wins than they had in the previous years. He's really good at scoring off the dribble. He can find his own lanes when he's driving in. He's not afraid to put a shoulder in you and be physical. Cam Kearney, really good player for this otherwise not so good Golden Eagle squad.
Virginia Beach native, one of a number of returners for this Clarion team, and he comes in off a second-team all-conference selection last year. What's the biggest challenge for Kearney today against the Orange?
Well, it's putting shots up, getting points and good looks against a Power 4 program in Syracuse. He's doing it at the D2 level. Now he has a chance to prove himself and all the bright lights on ESPN Plus against Syracuse.
And that's one of the biggest things I think that we can mention about this Clarion team is playing in the Division II level. This is probably the biggest stage that all of these Golden Eagles will play on today. So I'm sure the nerves are high coming in for Clarion.
Sure are, and also a lot to play for. If there's any game you're going to get riled up for, it's today against the Orange.
How about getting to start your season inside the JMA Wireless Dome? Kearney has some help, though, in the scoring department. A couple of other returners, I should say, for Clarion.
Yeah, they do. And it's Jeremy Thomas and Gavin Cody. Those are the big 2 guys. Talking about Gavin Cody, this guy is a pure sharpshooter, 45% from the three-point line, average 10 points a game, and 79% of his shots were threes. Kind of reminds you of a Jack Golke guy from Oakland last year. This guy can get hot from beyond the arc.
He said, I see it, Chris Bell, 42% from behind the arc. I'm going to raise you 45%.
And it's also Jeremy Thomas. And this guy, he's only 6'5", but he grabs a lot of rebounds for his size. He plays a lot bigger. He plays physical, nearly 8 rebounds per game. And if you're playing at the Division I level, this is going to be a real test because all those guys, you got 7'4" Naheem McLeod on you.
We mentioned Cam Kearney, also Jeremy Thomas, 2 guys that started every single game last year. And Thomas, a Pennsylvania native, playing for the Pennsylvania Clarion Golden Eagles. He's going to be banging with the big bodies down low today. Eddie Lampkin down there.
Yeah, I think these supporting cast members are going to be really important if Clarion wants to make this game competitive because all the pressure and all the attention is going to be on Cam Kearney. He's the returning leading scorer, almost 17 points a game, but it's going to be these 2 10-point-per-game returning scorers that are really going to need to step up.
Because Syracuse's defense will definitely try and key in on Mr. Kearney today to lock him down from the floor. To give you context for this exhibition to start the season, let's talk about the last time that Clarion played a Power 4 team in an exhibition. That 2 years ago when they faced off against Pittsburgh, and that one finished in a 103-51 win for the Panthers.
Not too good for the Golden Eagles. Pittsburgh, another Atlantic Coast Conference team. Clarion gets a chance to prove that, hey, we can do better than this in this one tonight, or this afternoon, excuse me.
And so much to try and focus on for both teams as you get ready for your regular season. And for this Clarion team, they've got the season opener to get ready for in 2 weeks against Bowie State. The biggest note from that Pitt game, 20 turnovers. That's one thing that I'm sure the Golden Eagles don't want to replicate today. Definitely not. Those turnovers are killers on either side of the ball. So for more on this Clarion versus Syracuse matchup, we're going to talk to a legendary Orange player. Eric Devendorf is on the call today, and we'll break down the matchup with him next. Welcome back here to the Cuse.com pregame show. Andrew Selover, Riley Underwood, getting you ready for Syracuse and Clarion today in the first exhibition of the season. We talked about how we're going to speak with Eric Devendorf, who is on the call to break down the matchup. But before we get to Devo, the starting lineup for Syracuse announced ahead of today's contest. Riley, a couple of unexpected changes for the Orange, including freshman Peter Majstorovic getting the start.
Yeah, it's really big news for him. He really gets a chance to prove himself. Coaches were raving about him in the offseason, and obviously he's impressed.
Wouldn't expect that to change everything that you see today. I'm sure you will still see all of the key faces that you're excited to see in today's game. But you don't see Donnie Freeman in the starting lineup or Chris Bell. A couple of surprises there. You do see Jaquan Carlos leading the point guard role.
Jaquan Carlos, that's no surprise for us. We were raving about him earlier. And this starting five is not what we expected, but it's also going to be a chance in an exhibition game to see how different guys can gel together and see who the real starting five is going to be entering the season.
And it's crazy how quickly Peter Majstorovic popped up on the scene. A couple of months ago, Syracuse fans didn't even know he was going to be a part of the roster, and today he makes the start in the first exhibition.
Real exciting stuff for him, and it'll be really fun to see what he can do.
All right, let's get to Eric Devendorf inside the Dome. He's on the call today for Syracuse and Clarion. First, Devo, I'm sure it's like Christmas morning for you because hoop season is back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whenever we can get to the start of basketball season, it's more enjoyable for me, so I'm excited to get it going.
So we mentioned Peter Majstorovic gets the start today. Expected to also see Elijah Moore and Donnie Freeman, a couple of freshmen playing in their first collegiate game. What are some signs early, Devo, that we can look for to see if those guys are comfortable out on the floor?
Well, I mean, they're freshmen, so you got to expect a learning curve. I think the big thing for guys, you know, freshmen, sophomores, junior, whoever it is, you just want to go out there and compete at a high level. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to learn from the mistakes, but continue to play through the adversity and just compete at a high level. Those guys are talented guys, and if they continue to do that and compete at a high level, things will fall into place, and they'll just learn from it.
Eric, 4 impressive transfers coming into the Syracuse program. Who do you see being the real difference maker this year for the Orange?
Yeah, well, I think all of them will get an opportunity. All 4 will get an opportunity to show what they can do. But a guy that really sticks out for me is Jaquan Carlos, transfer from Hofstra, averaged about 6.5 assists a game last season at Hofstra. He's a real table setter. I think he's a guy that's going to come in and take a lot of pressure off JJ, who last year had to do a lot of the ball handling duties, and Chris Bell as well. You know, Jaquan is going to be able to get guys in their spots, find them off the dribble, get into the paint, drive and kick. So he's just going to make it a lot easier for those guys.
An exhibition game against a Clarion team that's struggled in years past. What should the Orange hope to get out of this one?
Again, well, you guys talked about it with the starting lineup. I think they're just experimenting, see what guys play well together, you see who has chemistry. But the biggest thing it comes down to is competing in high energy. You know, through the ups and downs, through the highs and lows, you just want to see these guys compete at a high level and really set the tone for the season, you know, going forward.
I'll ask you the same question, Devo, on the Clarion side of things. This is probably the biggest stage that the Golden Eagles will play on all season long. What does Clarion hope to get out of today's exhibition?
Well, we talked to Coach Pitts earlier in the week via Zoom, and the big thing is he knows they're outmatched. He knows there's more talent on the Syracuse side, but he just wants his guys to come in and compete, play how they play. They're a fast-paced team. They want to shoot more threes this year. So regardless of what the score is, you know, he just wants to see this Clarion team come in and compete at a high level for 40 minutes.
All right, Devo, thanks for the time. Have a great call inside the Dome today. Syracuse men's basketball returns to the JMA Wireless Dome for the first time in 6 months. Final touch-ups on the Cuse.com pregame show, and we'll touch on the schedule next. Almost tip-off time for the first of 2 exhibitions on the Syracuse men's basketball schedule as Clarion comes to town on a Saturday afternoon. Back on the Cuse.com pregame show, wrapping things up before we get you to the Dome for live action. Andrew Selover, Riley Underwood, 2 exhibitions on the slate, and then you jump right into regular season action for Syracuse. Let's check out this regular season non-conference slate coming up for the Orange. You don't get much breathing room because Colgate, an NCAA tournament team, comes to town 2 games in. Yeah, Colgate's going to be a real test, and also a real test is going to be that Legends Classic. You play Texas, you could either play Texas Tech or St. Joseph's in the next game. And remember last year, that Maui Invitational, Syracuse was beat down on early in the season. And then you have to go to Tennessee for the ACC SEC Challenge as well. That's a top 15 preseason Volunteers team, so a couple of non-conference ranked games. And that was the big knocking point for Syracuse last year, is not enough quad 1 wins. You'll have some chances early on to get some quad 1 wins, boost your resume, and that will continue as you head into the ACC slate. Doesn't get easy for Syracuse. You add a couple teams to the ACC this year, but you don't have to go to Duke or to Carolina. Yeah, that's big. Playing those 2 major blue bloods
At home, you saw last year that you can beat North Carolina. At home, rush the court. There could be some more opportunities for that. I like what I'm seeing if you're a Syracuse fan for the conference matchups that Syracuse gets to have at the Dome.
Syracuse picked right in the middle of the pack in the preseason ACC selections. The Orange do have to go on that West Coast road trip and to SMU. So they go on the road to face all 3 new additions this season to the ACC. As we get ready for the first exhibition, we can toss the schedule out of the way and we can look at this matchup with Clarion. Let's talk about the Golden Eagles first. First game of the year for both squads. Who do you want to see as your key player to watch for Clarion?
For this game, I want to see Gavin Cote. I think he's really the player to watch because if Clarion wants to win this game, they're going to have to get hot from 3. Gavin Cote is a microwave. He can heat up in a minute, and you better watch out. You better get a hand up because all of his shots are coming from behind the arc. If they can get him going, hey, who knows? The Orange could be in trouble.
Well, if he heats up, then we'll see what happens, and maybe it'll be raining threes today. As for the Syracuse team, couple of surprises in that starting lineup. Still expect to see most guys throughout the course of the game. Who's your key player to watch for the Orange today?
Well, I think you could easily go with Donnie Freeman, but in this one, I'm going with Jaquan Carlos. He's a guy that completely transforms the offense into something totally new. Last year, you had Judah Mintz dribbling the air out of the ball. Now you have a guy that can really dribble around, facilitate, and pass the ball. And he makes a lot of flashy passes, but he makes some turnovers as well. That could be a point of concern because sometimes when you're trying to make those flashy no-look passes and try to be like Magic Johnson, you end up like Tragic Bronson. But Jaquan Carlos, this is a guy that really transforms. They have a new true point guard now, something they haven't had in years past.
I don't think that we'll see any Magic Johnsons on the floor today, but would you say Tragic Johnson? Is that what you call it?
Tragic Bronson, that's when you're the opposite of Magic Johnson. You're turning it over.
Okay, so we don't want to see any of that today either from either side. Biggest difference between Jaquan Carlos' game and Judah Mintz's game running the point?
Well, I think with Judah Mintz, you see a lot of isolation play, and that works to a certain extent when you play those weaker non-conference teams. When you got into ACC play and you tried to do that, everyone knew where the ball was going. It was going to Judah Mintz. And now, when Jaquan Carlos, you have all these other weapons around you, you can really facilitate, run some pick and roll with the big man Eddie Lampkin, and really expand the offense and scoring potential.
Before the season starts, I want you on the record. What defines a successful season this year for the Orange?
Andrew, I think a successful season is NCAA tournament berth. We saw it last year. They didn't make it. They were on the back end of the bubble, but I'd like to see an NCAA tournament berth finish top 5 in the ACC. They were tied for 5th last year. I think with this expanded conference, if you finish top 5 this year, you're probably in the tournament, especially if you can win some of those key non-conference games.
And we talked about those 2 key games that we pointed out against ranked teams in the non-con coming up against Tennessee and Texas. The road to March starts today for Syracuse as they take on Clarion in the first exhibition of the game. We'll see you at the halftime report on ACC Network Extra. For now, we send you to the Dome. Tip-off coming up between Syracuse and Clarion. Enjoy.